This is the chart that we were looking at before we came to the interview. Let's see if we can bring it up here. It's a reflection of Germany and Portugal. And your yields are now trading incredibly similarly to where Germany is at the moment. What is that a reflection of in your mind? What does that tell us? What is the financial market signalling about where Portugal is right now?
I think the financial markets are recognizing the effort that we have made in reducing our deficit, and our deficit this year is going to be 0.7% of the GDP, but they are also signaling that we are having a reduction of our indebtedness, and at the same time, on the other side of the balance, that economic growth accelerated, and accelerated in a very positive way, because it accelerated pushed by investment and pushed by exports. We had an increase in 11% in our exports last year. This year they are growing again at 9.6% in the first months of the year. So we are having a good moment in terms of economic recovery, with the job creation, with the investment pushing the economic growth, which means that is a sustainable growth. I think this...
Sustainable. That's an interesting word that you use there. So is your sense now that Portugal no longer needs the assistance of the ECB? Because some would argue that that chart is a reflection of the fact that the ECB is in the market aggressively buying government bonds around Europe. Your sense is that the Portuguese recovery is now sustainable and therefore, by extension, maybe doesn't need the ECB anymore.
I think the ECB was very important in stabilizing the financial system in the process of adjustment. I think the ECB should continue to do its policy and should do changes in the policy that are very smooth, and that is, I think, the path that is going. But I think the signals and this decrease in the yieldings, I think, have to do a lot with the two things that I was saying. First of all, indebtedness is decreasing. The deficit is at 0.7% this year. We have achieved all the targets that we have put to our economy. But on the other side as well, the economy is growing, is creating jobs. So I think the economy is having a good moment. And at the same time, it's not just growing. If it would be growing just with public expenses or with consumption, it wouldn't be as sustainable as the growth that we are seeing, which is a growth based on investment and a lot of foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment, the stock of foreign direct investment increased 8% last year, with big investments of all the major car factories that we have in the country, but also with a lot of investments of technological firms and investments in areas like tourism and pharmaceutical industry, aeronautics, so new sectors that are emerging. And I think this means that the growth that we are having here is creating growth for the future.
We see that GDP growth is kind of leveled out. You know, there were some big dips, obviously, during the crisis, big swings, I should say, very volatile. But if you look over the last, say, 3 years, you're hovering around 2% and climbing. Last year was, 2.7%. I know you've forecast for 2.2% in 2018. Are there any changes in that forecast, Mr. Minister? I mean, do you expect that that to be able to be brought up a little bit closer to last year's GDP?
Last year we forecast 1.7, and that was the forecast that we didn't got it right. We got 2.7, so it was not 1.7. That was the initial forecast that we did for 2017. So I think we have been above forecast in terms of growth, which means that the forecast for this year is higher than the initial forecast for the last year. It's 2.3 now, but that means that we have some room to overachieve that forecast. But we want to be prudent, and not have forecasts that are too positive, and then not having enough room to accommodate any less growth so what. So what we have done in the budget and what we are doing in the government forecasts is to go for a goal that is achievable, that is realistic, which is the 2.3%, which would be a positive growth for Portugal. But what we are doing is working on implementing measures in financing the economy, in innovation, and in areas of stimulating the economic growth and investment to overachieve that target. And that is the effort that we have to do along the year.
One of the things I'm sure you're thinking about at the moment is what is happening globally, and the global economy is doing quite well at the moment. But there are a number of clouds that are starting to gather, and one of those represents trade. You represent a small, open economy that trades around the world. A lot of it is with Europe, but nevertheless, you have an economy that trades around the world. Do you worry that the increasing trade tensions will be something that ultimately could end up impacting the Portuguese economy?
I think that the trade tensions are not positive. In our case, what we say about Portugal is that we are open for trade, open for investment, open for everyone that wants to come and live or visit Portugal. Yep. And what I think is that we always have this message, but this message now is very powerful. And a lot of investors from outside of the European Union that want to get into the European market are feeling that we take this for real. And are seeing that in Portugal, if they invest in Portugal, the government, the society welcomes them. And in some other countries, people are having doubts about it, but not in Portugal.
Some other countries?
I think in some countries in Europe are having some protectionism about investment. They want this investment, but not that type of investment. And some countries in the world are that were champions of open trade are now having doubts about it, and I don't think that is positive. But I think, in a way, we have to establish a very firm position about that. And in Portugal, our position, we are for trade openness, and we always have been a bridge between Europe and other continents like Asia, but also Africa and South America. And this is the position that we have. We are in Europe, but we are also in the Atlantic, and we want trade and investment to be open and to flow. And we also want to be a door to the European Union market, both for English firms that are already established in Portugal, or for firms from Asia or from other parts of the world that are established themselves in Portugal, because they see that is the entrance for a big market and not just the small market that Portugal still represents.
Minister, it's been great to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed for coming to see us
Thank you.
Here at Bloomberg. The Economy Minister of Portugal.